Hey guys, welcome. So I just finished up this project. I'm going to be walking through the entire build of this rack behind me here, all from scrap lumber that I've just got in my garage. I didn't go out and buy any wood, didn't buy any screws. The only thing I actually bought was just the shelf pieces, which I'll talk about later in the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you like my videos, please like and subscribe. But otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. Hey guys, welcome back. So behind on projects, a lot of stuff has come up with life, work, a whole bunch of different things coming up. Hunting season is coming and gone. I've already got my bull elk back and processed. Still working on the skull, but otherwise a lot of things have set me behind on my projects. Garage become a disaster again. As you can see, I've got Christmas decorations, the empty stuff. We just put everything up inside the house and outside for getting ready for the Christmas season. I just got to get these empties out of the way. But on a previous video, I was just kind of cleaning up part of the garage, trying to basically reclaim my workshop, which is really tough. Every time any other new event comes up, family activities, whatever, they just really set me behind. And so now, going off of a comment that I got when I did this, the guy was totally right, talking about how these types of shelving are a waste of space and suggested doing a full wall unit. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I am going to pull all of this stuff out of the way and so that I can go ahead and do a full wall unit. I've already done some pre-measuring for how I'm gonna build it out. I'm gonna use these black and yellow style totes down here. You guys see them everywhere, Costco, Home Depot, Lowe's, they're just everywhere. I'm going to do 3 wide of those large ones up top, and then I believe from a measurement I'm going to be doing 4 wide of these black and clear ones. They're the ones with the lids that collapse into each other. But I just already have a bunch of these, don't need to buy them, so I'm just going to make those work for my project. But again, I'm going to do a shelf of the yellow and black for some really big stuff, and then 2 shelves of these black and clear. And then below that, I'm gonna go ahead and put a small workbench in, kind of like a desk, some area maybe for some reloading stuff, we'll see. But then below that, there'll be some more storage, and I'll have like a stool or whatever that I'll be able to sit there and be able to organize some things a little better, including some of my basic tools and stuff. It's gonna be roughly 6 feet wide, and then, like I said, all the way to the ceiling. So that will help really take advantage of the space as was suggested from that comment. So I appreciate the feedback, and I'm gonna go ahead and roll with it. All right, I've gone ahead and cleared out the area. Now I've just made a bigger mess in the rest of my garage, some stuff out in the driveway and stuff. Luckily there's no snow right now. I've got a bunch of scrap wood from previous projects or dumpster finds, whatever, that I'm gonna attempt to go ahead and make that work versus using any raw brand new wood. I also have a 2x12x16 that I can utilize. I'll cut it down to get some really straight posts if I need to. We'll see how I'm able to put this together. I'm not planning to do floor to ceiling posts. I'm gonna build in sections, so the bottom section and then the second section with the clear totes will sit on that. And then the top with the yellow will be a third section. That way I can utilize more of the scrap wood, and as well as making it a bit more sturdy in between for each level of tote. It just seems like I was going to get a stronger frame around each one of those. Some of those might be a little heavy, so I just want to make sure I'm not going to have any issue there. I'm only going to be framing off of the front. On the back, I'll be utilizing the wall that I already have, the studs there, and then just creating a plank that goes straight across, and that's what I'll attach to for each shelf as I come down. As far as the tools, I'm going to be using very simple stuff for this project. I'm not doing anything fancy, but I've got my tape measure, of course. I've got a speed square over there for making sure I've got right angles, putting everything together. For any of those bigger ones, I do have this T-square here. It's a drywall square. May or may not be able to use that or need to use it, but I have it pulled out just in case. I've got a level to make sure that I've got my posts going the right way. That's going to be the biggest thing, is making sure everything is squared to the ground. And then of course I have an impact driver that makes driving those screws in much easier. I've also got a drill, of course. I'm going to pre-drill most of those holes so I don't get any split out. You can also drive the screws with that. You just have to keep changing out bits. Not ideal, but if that's what you have, you can make it work. I also have a pocket hole jig here from Craig, just a very simple clamp on one. I'm not positive I'm going to use it, but some of these angles that I've pre-drawn out, I'm thinking I might be using some pocket holes to make all of the screws
work. I'm really trying to go low profile, not just board on top of board, because you know, every 2x4 you put on the next one, that's another 1.5 inches. And so each side could be 3 inches, and I'm attempting to prevent that as much as I can. So pocket holes will help me put some of that stuff just in line with each other. And then a circular saw, at the very least, to be able to cut all the boards down. I won't actually be using that, as I have a miter saw. I also have a table saw. If I do end up using that 2x12x16, I'll be running that down into strips and cutting it down into the widths that I need. And as far as the screws that I'm going to be utilizing for this, I'm just using a bunch of leftover stuff. I have a bunch of different projects. Some are longer to be able to drive into different spots. I want to make sure that the board I'm putting up on the wall, I can get through the 2x4 that I'm putting up on the backside and into the rails that are on that wall. I got to get through that drywall as well. So I'm going to be using some at least 3-inch ones there. I've got some 2-inch to be able to put board on top of board. I don't want them coming out on the other side where I'm going to be having my hands or whatever pushing totes in and such. But again, I've just got a bunch of leftovers. Some of them are Phillips, some of them are Star. I definitely want to get through the Phillips ones. I don't use those ones too much anymore, so I'm going to make sure this project eats up most of those. I didn't go out and buy a bunch of material for this. It's just stuff I already had laying around. And again, a lot of this stuff I sourced out of just dumpsters from job sites. As I was driving by, I happened to see them sticking out. So grab one here, grab one there. All of a sudden you got a pile. Another big call out is I have some rough notes as far as what I'm planning to do over here, some rough measurements. I've got the floor to ceiling. I've got the depth that I need. I've measured out the totes from length to width, depth, all of it. You want to make sure that you're accounting for how those totes are going to fit into each shelf, how much room you're going to give in between. You want to have some give so they're not like struggling with each other to pull out. I've put about 1/4 to 1/2 inch in different spots from top to bottom and make sure I don't have to somehow just perfectly come in straight, because if you make it too tight, you're somehow going to have to get that tote parallel to the shelf to be able to slide it in. But if you have a little bit of give, you can kind of start it like that and then get it up. And that's how normal drawers and such would work as well. So make sure you account for those kind of things. But again, any type of rough notes just to get started, you'll want to do that. It's nothing fancy. I've just drawn some watch outs that I need to remember, as well as some rough measurements. Specifically, the tote sizes are going to be a big one. I'm going to be building basically from top to bottom to make sure that I account for those top sections for the totes. Those are my main goals, to be able to fit those up there. I'm not necessarily going to hang them and mount them downward. I'm going to build the sections, so the squares. So the front is what I'm going to build first. I'm going to build that top square. I'm going to build the second square, the third square. That's going to be basically each one of those is a shelf for the totes. And then I'm going to put the whole thing up at once, putting the bottom framing underneath it, and then kind of setting it up. Another call out, don't assume that everything out here is square. Quite regularly it's not. The wall could be off, this door could be off if you're trying to set it against something very specifically, thinking that this door is perfectly perpendicular to the ground. It might not be. This wall may not be square to the ceiling, square to the floor. You want to make sure you take those things into account as well, as otherwise you could get your measurements could be off a bit. So I'm not trying to make this thing perfect, as I said, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. But already when I attempted to put some pre-lines up here, I realized that ceiling is not square to the wall. When I went to draw a line just straight out to make sure to kind of be a guide of where I was going to be coming out over the floor, it actually started going over the top of this rail here, which clearly my bench can't be out here. So I'm going to have to account for that and make sure when I'm putting everything up, it's going to set how I want it. So it might not be perfectly square. As I mentioned, I have a square here. I might not be able to do that on certain parts of that wall, since I am using the wall as part of this. If you were building this out as a standalone piece of unit, you could square everything up, put it right up against the wall. It still wouldn't be flush to the wall, of course, but the unit itself could be square. Since I am utilizing that wall, I'm going to have to account for the fact that somewhere in this wall, it's slightly recessed compared to the angle out here on the floor. Another thing to consider is I have this footer around the bottom that also might have some different angles off of it, but I'm not going to be attaching anything to it. That's just going to be underneath my unit. We'll worry about that when we get to it. So a little more on the making space for the totes. You want to make sure you count for the widest spot. So that's going to be the lid section on any one of these totes, regardless of which style you're using. That top brim is going to be the widest spot, right? So that's the space that you need to account for when you're building it in there. So right here, I have about 15 1/4 width on the height. You want to make sure you go to the highest point. This hinge here is actually higher than the rest of the tote, so I want to account for that. And you want to get a straight line, of course. It's better if you do this on the ground, but strictly for demonstrating. You want to get right to the edge, and I've got 13 inch. Okay, and then the depth, there can be some overhangs, so you don't have to make the depth perfect. It will encompass probably all of this. Mine will probably not encompass all of the black and yellow ones because they are pretty deep, and I don't want a 30-inch deep shelf. So I'm gonna do most likely a 22-inch deep shelf, which is this. I've got 21.5. So I'm gonna just go ahead and put it to 22. I'll have about an 8-inch overhang of these yellow ones. As far as percentages of balance go, that's not gonna be a big deal for these totes, but make sure you account for that as well. You can't go too shallow, otherwise they could totally just tip out. And so since I am using 2 different style of totes, I need to make sure that one, yes, the depth is a certain way, as I already talked about. I'm gonna go 22 inches, but I also need to make sure I'm accounting for that width entirely on the inside of the framing. So since I've got 15-inch wide here, and then on these yellow totes, I've got a 20 1/8. I'm doing, or yeah, 20 1/4 we'll just say, but I'm doing 3 of the yellow and black totes wide, and I'm doing 4 of these wide. So the 15, I've got 60 inches there, plus I'm gonna have a brace in between 2 of these. So it's gonna go 1, 2, brace, 1, 2, just to make sure I have the support for the yellow and black ones above. But that puts me at 15 times 4 totes wide. I've got 60 inches plus that 2x4 that I'm gonna be putting right in the middle there for bracing. That's another 1.5 inches. I need that much space just in between the outside framing, right? And then on the yellow tote, 20 1/4, 3 of those. I'm at 60, basically 61, 60.75, but I'm gonna do 61, just call it. And I can give a little bit of space there, but again, I needed more space on this one because I'm 61.5, so I'm gonna call it 62. You can give a little bit of extra space as well, just to make sure you don't have any issues there. Another thing to consider is don't build out a shelf or a unit to something that you might not keep years from now. So if it's a very specific style of toolbox or something that you're not even sure you like, don't build a unit that's gonna support that. Build it for something that's gonna be able to support later. So you can make these shelves even bigger to support other style of totes and whatever in the future. I've chosen some totes that are always been around, that are gonna continue to be around. So if I break one and I need to replace it, I know I can. And I am building mine to be very specifically slimmed down. I want it to be as reduced space as possible for each tote. So I am building mine very specific to these totes, but just consider if you got a hodgepodge of style of totes, maybe it's time to replace them all with one style that you know you're gonna be able to source in the future, should you need to. And you're not going to be limited by how you built this out. Wrong, I am going to use my circular saw. It actually is easier to cut this 16-foot board with just a normal circular saw instead of trying to align everything to use my miter saw. So everybody still needs a circular saw. I've got this plate measured out to the width of the entire shelf. I'm going to make the 2 plates for the front. I'll have one left over that I could either use in the back or trim down for the middle. I'm gonna take this 2x12 and trim it down to 3 3.5 inch, because that's the nominal lumber size that I'm attempting to match. And you want to count for the inside of the blade where the teeth actually will hit. That will be your net size. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a shop shelf, but as close as we can make it. All right, so I got those top plates. Now I'm gonna do the side plates. And again, this is just lumber that was either left over or found in potentially a dumpster. As you can see, nothing fancy here, but it's certainly gonna serve its purpose. There's just gonna be a post that's 28.5 inches high on two sides. This one's just a 1/4 inch over, so I don't have much to be able to take off on this one, but it's gonna be perfect. So the two side fronts right there. For that middle section, nothing super pretty, but again, it's a shop shelf. Didn't want to spend a ton of money on it. I'm gonna square them up, as this one looks like it's been cut kind of funky, and this one I do have some room. This one's got 1 inch of excess, so I'm gonna go and square up a side, and then I'll measure it out. Again, this one I don't have any room, but luckily, that one looks like it's pretty square. All right, so I've got that middle section pre-cut out. Top plate, bottom plate, the two sides, and all I'm gonna do here is make a square. This is gonna go in the middle of the whole thing. The top of the box is gonna be the bottom plate of the yellow and black shelves, and then the bottom plate is gonna be the bottom of the two sections of the clear. I'm basically gonna build a T in the middle. I'm gonna take a middle plate, double check the measurements that net out from this box, put a plate all the way through the dead center, giving me that 13.5 inch in between the two sections that I'll then split, and then I'll put some bracing in between the two middles, and again, that will be the middle of this section. So I've got them all squared up right now. I'm just gonna pre-drill my holes between both of the two plates and then build a box. I am just gonna use 2 on each end. You wanna attempt to center this section. I took the end of one of these and just drew a rough line, so I knew where the center of that was gonna be. So I've got these 3-inch screws here. I'm gonna go ahead and use that for making this box. I do have some 2-inch that like I said, I wanted to burn through. I'm gonna use that for some of the hidden pocket holes, as I'll be putting them in deeper and I don't need them to be that long. You don't worry about the end to end. You wanna make sure this lines up with this part. So that's why you saw it stretch out, of course. And then you can twist it to line it up all square here, and then you know it's square over there as well. Again, some of this is reused lumber, scraps and such, so some of it could have some twists. All right, so this is that initial square. I already had the measurement from this on my original design, but I just want to make sure that the lumber is not making that a different. If it's bowed at all, if I need it slightly 1/8 of an inch or something like that, that'll matter if it's causing the sides to come in or push out. I just want to make sure that it stayed exactly where I need it to be. The tops are the big deal, so I definitely want to make sure that I'm maintaining that. I needed at least 64 inches on my design. I've overspaced it, so I'm actually at 70 on the outside, so 67 on the inside. So I've got plenty of give, but I still want to keep it square. All right, so it actually ended up being perfect to the measurements I had created before, so good there. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is measure to the exact center on both sides, and then I'm going to measure out this 1.5 inch to make sure I find where I want this to sit, because again, the important thing is my 13.5 on each side of it, and then those totes will fit in there just perfect. All right, so now I'm going to put a brace between the middle of both of these, so 2 in between, and then this will create the extra stability for those big yellow totes above it. It's kind of why I built it separately. I just thought this would give it a lot more heavy structure for all of the weight that'll probably go in those big ones. It's a lot of extra tools and stuff that kind of go in there, and so want to make sure I'm not going to have any issues. So just double checking. Should have 13.5 on both of those. All right, so as you can see, there's a little bit of bowing somewhere in these planks, especially right here, which this will also help straighten that out. And again, I just need to make sure I get the dead center from each side. So this is one of those spots that I did go ahead and use the drywall square. Make sure I'm taking the same line all the way across so my measurements don't get slightly off. But otherwise, I'm gonna come in from each end, top and bottom, with the screws here. From this section, I'm either gonna have to toenail in from this side or from the outside here. I could use the Craig pocket jig for that as well to make those perfect and clean. So we'll see when I get to that, but first I'm gonna go ahead and tack in the two ends. All right, so I went ahead and put a clamp on it just to make sure everything stays in line while I'm putting these in, but I set up the Craig pocket hole as well. I'm just gonna use normal wood screws once I make the holes, but using this as a guide, I'm gonna basically zipper, so I'm gonna alternate one on the end, one in the middle, and then from the other side, I'll do the reverse of those two holes to make sure I offset and don't run into them. So that way these two braces here are tied in perfectly, and I'm not using any type of bracing like the brackets that you can buy, the metal brackets. Those could certainly be used here and it'd be that much quicker, but I didn't want to spend the money on those. All right, so moving up to the next level, this is going to be the section that has the black and yellow totes. This is going to have a top panel. This is upside down right now. This is a 67-inch for me because I'm going to put the two supports from the outside, and then I'm going to mount this to my ceiling. What I've done here is measured this to the same that I did the center part, and then I had to account for the width of this in this support structure here, right? So I know that in between for my totes, I've come up with a number of 15.5. The tote itself is 15 inches. It gives me a ½ inch of clearance. Well, in order to maintain that depth and have this leg be on the outside, I needed to include that 1.5 inch diameter of this 2x4. So now I'm gonna go ahead and attach the two sides, and then I'm gonna create some pocket holes to come in from these into this 2x4 here to attach them. Next, I'll be putting it up on some supports up to the ceiling. Utilizing some clamps, I'm holding everything together, and I'm basically freehanding some toe-in screws right here. I attempted to do it really freehand with the Craig, ended up over drilling, so I had to make some new ones. But ultimately, I'm just gonna take still 3-inch, and it would be coming in diagonally through this lumber into the next. So I've just cut everything down to size to make the base. I've got some 2x6s that I cut down to 72 and 3/16, which is the distance between the floor. I made sure to set it out where it was gonna be in relation to the ceiling, because that could be different based on the angle of your driveway or your whatever surface you're putting it on. And then I cut it down to that. I've got 2 of them. I'm gonna put this 2x4 across the top. This is gonna go up under this here, creating an extra set of stability across the middle, because I'm not gonna have a beam in the middle of it. So just creating some more, kind of like a header that you would do above a door or a window or something like that. So going across the bottom there, again, it's gonna attach in between these two as such, and then I'm gonna offset the rest of the front of these with additional 2x6s, finishing out basically a full post for both sides. So when all said and done, it's gonna be basically a 4x6. I'm gonna use some glue and some screws to button that all up together, but I'll have a nice solid base, and then in between that is where I'll be putting my bench and then some additional shelving below. Using a square, just make sure everything's lined up correctly. Pre-drill some holes, and I'm just countersinking some 2-inch. So this will set right up underneath the rest of it, and then we'll set up some bracing. So I've basically got everything in place. This is the bottom, this is the top. I've cut off 2 scrap pieces of wood here. I'm just going to attach them right underneath this rail here. They are exactly 22 inches out. That's how far I wanted this whole rack to come. So I'm going to attach one on each side, use that as my depth gauge, and then I'll work to get this up on top. And then using the level, just want to make sure that the front is perpendicular to the floor. And I'm not attaching anything to the wall yet. I want to make sure that I have enough give to be able to get this up there. There's very little margin of fit. It's like a 1/16 of an inch. And my thought is, if I can get them to kind of bow apart, I can set them together and they will collapse into each other. So basically with the other one on top, I can then press them together and then I'll attach everything, including I still got to put the rails in the back. So I'm intending for those braces to be on the inside, kind of like these ones, not in this section necessarily, but on the other sections. That's why I overbuilt that tub space. I am planning to have those braces on the inside. Once I know where those are going to land, I'll put up the rails. So now it's just a matter of setting this up on top. As an added just in case, I'm going to take an extra scrap piece and I'm going to put it right here to act as like a leg to keep everything from toppling over on me while I'm working. I might do it on the other side as well. We will see. Nothing fancy, but again, it'll just keep it from coming this way. This part isn't too heavy. It's just 2x4s. So I'm just gonna ladder it up and see how well it sets in there. And if I gotta do something different, I will make a call at that point. Okay, close. This is what I was talking about with the everything not necessarily being square. Over here seems to be lower than over there. Maybe we're actually good. So with the top and the bottom tacked together, we can just double check the level, because I've definitely moved some stuff around here. And since I've used a bunch of different lumber, not everything's perfectly square, because again, a lot of this was just extra scrap, and with nominal lumber, I didn't do anything to trim it down, but looking decent for what we wanted. Mark the floor. Got the old zircon stud finder just to make sure that I'm hitting a stud on the ceiling. This is where a laser would come in real handy. I could basically get off of these shelves here and line up the back line. I'm just gonna have to use my level to do it because I don't actually have a laser level, which is fine. But I'm gonna go ahead and button up the rest of this here before I go ahead and start lining up
those spots in the back. So I'm just using the level from the outside of the unit that I built here, checking the bubble, and then I'm just transcribing that line across to the wall, and then I'll be able to do a cross beam along the studs of the wall itself. And again, just saving a little bit of lumber by doing that. But you could totally build just a freestanding unit, and that would probably go even quicker, because you could just build that whole thing, stand it up in 2 pieces, and then connect it. I got 2 points there. Can utilize my level to trace them across. There we go. There's the first one, and now I know this line is pretty close to in line with this shelf here. It's not necessarily going to be perfect. It's going to be really close though. As far as tracing it across, you could get off by a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. It's not going to be a big deal for these shelves that are going to have the totes. And then when I do the desk down here, that I'll make square for my own sanity. And again, making these shelves line up with back there, all this is doing is allowing me to create a spot over there that I'm going to be able to line up and put some pickets in between. This is where the pocket holes are going to come in. As I'm attempting to do this very slimlined, if you use just flat 2x4s behind this, you got to take into account the lips of these totes as you are deleting some space. As you push those totes in, you now have 1.5 inches of lost space because of that framing. I was planning to make these all flush and not lose any space, so I'll be able to go right up to the wall with my plan. But totally not a big deal to just account for that 1.5 inch loss, and then it's a lot quicker that way too. Also, you could utilize maybe some like 1/8 inch, 1/4 inch, some sort of plywood sheets to go right over these 2 sections. I'm just going to be using pickets for the totes to slide across, so I'm going to cut some 2x4s down to create some rails going across, because it's the lumber that I already have and I don't want to go out and buy anything. So now I just need to trace those next 2 lines across here. All right, so for this first level, I'm about to put this board up right here. I've measured it out between my light switch. I'll have to do something else on the other side to finish it out. But what I've done is, since this is gonna be behind this big section here, I can go ahead and do a full 2x4. It'll just mirror this one that's in front, and that will allow me to set the rails directly on it, the 2x4s right on it, and it'll be flush with this one. I'll just pocket hole into this from the other side, but it'll allow me to go right down into the rail that I'm about to put up. And then as I move up, I'm gonna be able to mirror this in the back. My plan is to pocket hole a little bit into these 2x4s like this, and I'm gonna mount them like that against the wall. So pocket holing about maybe halfway into it, just to make sure that I can see into the studs behind. That'll allow me to keep a nice slim profile without just having a ton of lost space because of the width of the 2x4s. So after a bunch of messing around with it, I finally found the studs. They're 24 inch. I found it off of a receptacle, but I also have some plywood OSB that they used behind the drywall, so it made using a stud finder impossible. So now that I found them, I can get those studs up. So the first stud is up there. I may end up changing this brace over here, but using this back wall, again, for mine was a little tough to find the studs, but now that I found them, I got the line up here to mark where the top of each of these shelves are. So going straight across with each one, I've marked the lines. The lines going vertical are the studs themselves. I only seem to have studs on the 24-inch mark instead of the 16th. I'm also gonna end up moving this light switch, not a big deal. You hopefully don't have anything like that. I'm gonna be moving the garage door opener as well. I'm gonna move them onto the outside of this. So anything like that, you probably need to pull a permit. Just an FYI for your own at-home projects. But otherwise, I'm gonna end up putting the, hopefully the garage door on somewhere on the end facing this side, and then the light switch is probably gonna come right over here, using like some external conduit, some metal conduit piping, and then like a metal box over here. Not that you need to do that, but that's how I'm gonna do it. So otherwise, I have the lines marked. Now I'm gonna go through and get the studs through. As you can see, I still need to frame out a piece here so that I can finish out the shelf coming across here. And then for the ones up here, I'm gonna have the edge facing out instead of the face of the board. That means this is gonna be facing out that way, the same way that I have these shelves going. All right guys, one more thing. As I had mentioned, I'm attempting to use a bunch of leftover pieces. So rather than using brand new boards to hit this 70.5-inch mark, it could be 70, but I just want to make sure I have enough overhang on this side where it ends just to hit that stud. But rather than using brand new boards in order to hit those two wall pieces, I'm going to use some cutoff ends that I had left over. I've cut them down to the half mark. I've got 35 1/4 on each one of these pieces. I have 4 of them now. There's 1, 2, 3, and this one's 4. I had to brace it up because otherwise it'll hit the light switch, and it kept turning off my light. But I've pre-marked the lines where I'm going to be drilling the holes in order to hit the studs, and then basically I'm going to meet them in the middle like that. And as I mentioned, I will be using a brace to go right in the middle. It will come from the bottom up twice, and I'm going to use this to meet those boards in the middle. So I'll be able to tack them both in at an angle into this as well as each other. I could toenail them in. I could either use a pocket hole jig for that or just go ahead and toenail them in. But otherwise, this allows me to use some more scrap wood versus using brand new pieces for something you're not even going to see back there. So this is going to work perfect. So now I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill all the holes into these boards. Again, they're going to be going butt to the wall, edge to the wall. I'm going to be drilling down through here. And what I've gone ahead and done is put one of the drill stop kind of attachments that a lot of sets come with if you don't have one. They're pretty handy just to make sure you don't over drill. I've got a larger size screw here that's actually exactly the size diameter of the screw head that I have. So that's gonna work perfect for getting the screw down that hole. As I've pre-measured this to get me down to about the last inch there in order to make sure I grab enough stud on the other side of the wall as well. As I mentioned, I do have to get through sheetrock and the OSB that's under this wall before the studs even start. So with that OSB and with that stud, I think I'll get a good enough connection there, so it's not a big deal. But you definitely want to get as much grip between this and the stud itself to make sure it's going to be able to bear that weight. I've already shown you a couple times, but I'm going to have that brace in the middle as well, so that's going to help for me as far as these having any type of tipping weight, like pressure pushing them down. I don't think that's going to be a problem with mine, and it's really not going to be that much weight on the backside there either. And certainly for something like this, a drill press would work really well. I don't have that. Again, a big proponent of just using the tools you have. I've just got my hand drill. It could be corded. I've got one of those too. Would totally work just fine. Certainly a drill press would make these all go perfect. I'm also working in really cramped space because I've got kind of a disaster area around me as I'm working on this. So just working on top of my little temporary miter station in order to put these screw holes where I need them. Definitely want to make sure you keep it as straight as you can when you're doing it by hand like this. Otherwise, you're going to have that screw coming out at an angle. And actually, it looks like this screw bit is dull, so I'm going to have to grab a different one. All right, so each of these are basically mirrored of top and bottom, so I just got to take one of each, starting with the end over here. All right, and since I've already traced my line, I know that on level, I'm going to be good. I just got to match this up to the lines that I've mapped out from the wall to the board. The ideal way to put a board against the wall and use it for structure is going to be flat like this, right? You're going to get the most strength out of that, especially because you can put 2 screws in it to hold it back against the wall. I'm attempting to save some space, so this is the best way to do it, which I am not doing. But since I am utilizing some bracers, once I cut the right size, that'll be coming up underneath here, as well as up underneath the end over here. I'm going to be able to put some stability to that as well, and that's going to stop that give. So it's not going to be a big deal for the way I'm building mine, but if you're not planning to use any type of bracers, don't attach boards like this. They're just going to end up bending right at the screws, breaking off most likely, and whatever you put on them is going to fall. So just wanted to call that out. The quickest and simplest is to put them flat face side against the wall. It's what you're going to get the most strength out of. And that would have just caused my shelves to need to be a little bit bigger because I would have lost that space from those. But again, not a big deal with the way I am planning to do mine. All right, as you can see, there is plenty of strength to that. But again, just not as strong as face. And then another thing I'm doing to make this a little quicker is I'm pre-drilling these screws, pre-setting them in the 2x4 itself, also taking them all the way through and backing them out of the board. That way I can hold the board flush against the wall. I'm not going to get any pushback on the board itself when I attempt to put it into the wall as well, making sure I get a nice seated attachment. That's it for these back ones. I'm going to put these braces here on the ends and on the middle, but as far as getting them to the wall, that's it. Then I'm just going to have to come up with the planks that go in between. I am looking to probably split some 2x4s down the middle with my table saw and kind of make just like banister style rails. We'll see. Could get some split out with that. So we'll just do a test on one of those, and then otherwise make a decision whether it's going to be full 2x4s or some 1x4s that I cut down. Here's the 2 pieces I cut to be the center stabilizing piece. Definitely added a bunch. Not going to be able to give at all, especially once I start putting these pickets. It's all kind of lock up with the wall itself. But now I'm going to toenail some screws into the tops and bottoms just to make sure everything stays attached as it needs to. Nothing fancy here, just finding how to get into each one. And as you can see, the back side of this one's a little blown out. Just scrap wood, so for what I wanted it to do, it's perfect. All right, so I started cutting down the planks that I'm going to be using to go across. I haven't actually cut them to the length yet. I need 15 and 1/8 inch is the length of each one. And while I was doing this, I realized it's going to take a lot of planks to do it the way I wanted to. It could still technically work even with the number of planks I'm planning to use now. But what I decided to go ahead and do is I actually went and bought something. So I lost some recorded content right here. Not a big deal. I'm just talking about this piece of hardboard that I picked up from Home Depot. It's a little over 14 bucks pre-tax, so not a big investment. Still trying to go cheap on this build, but it's going to allow me to fill in those shelves without using as many pickets as I originally had planned. I can space them out a little bit more, and one sheet is actually going to cover all of the shelving space that I have with a little bit of planning. So I've got a 4x8 sheet of this hardboard here, and it's just me. I don't have a way to use the table saw to run it through cleanly, keep everything straight. So what I've gone ahead and done is measured out the 22-inch cut that I need for this first one, and then I've taken my 48-inch level and I've squared it up. I've accounted for this space here on my hand circular saw, and that's 1 1/8 inches on mine. So I added this to the cut that I need so that it'll line up, and this is just going to be my hard line to draw across here, and this is how I'm going to cut it, just stabilizing it and cutting it across. Again, just working with what I have. I do have a table saw, of course, so unless I go get some help to be able to run this sheet through, no good way to cut it by myself. So here's what we're going to do, and I don't have a track saw either, so just using a level, since it is only 48-inch across, I'm able to cover that, and I know my level is square, versus if I was using just a piece of wood, I wouldn't necessarily know if that piece of wood was straight, unless I had pre-cut it to be so. I've seen other videos where guys use this hardboard as a track saw, get a long sheet of it, and you can lay that across, use that as the guide for the circular saw. So definitely something to consider in the future as well, for a homemade track saw. But for now, I'm just needing to get these cut down to the 22 inches and then get them up on the project. All right, so I just finished putting all of the supports going across. As you can see, I just used pocket holes. I used the Craig, a lot of hand adjusting, had to reset it multiple times, so that was pretty cumbersome. Just drove those straight down in there, but the rest are all basically pocket holes from one side or the other. I even pocket holed to go through here, straight into those. Same up there. I used a little bit bigger supports on the top, as I am going to be putting the really heavy ones on there, as I said. I only did one screw straight across. I think that's going to be enough, as those are 3-inch screws. I actually set these down to that last inch, so I believe that's going to be plenty of support. Most of the weight's going to be on the outside anyway, the end and the front, but otherwise that's it. And then here's that hardboard that I cut down. Pretty simple. It was one 4x8 sheet that fit all of this for me. So pretty simple. Nothing fancy. I still got to finish the garage door opener back there and that light outlet that I got to move. So I won't be tacking this one down. The rest, I'm going to drill basically in the corners, probably make sure that I'm not going to hit any other hardware, so something to consider. But going to tack in just probably 4 spots there. It does not need to be any more than that, as it's not going to really add anything except for preventing it from lifting out. Here's what the top looks like. I don't need to cover the supports. This is more so just to make sure that where they'll be sitting, they're not going to slip through, and it does add a little bit of support, but otherwise pretty simple. Really thin profile, as I mentioned, so I only lose 1.5 inches, which is the diameter of a 2x4. I only lose that 1.5 inches per shelf, right? So down here I lose a little more because I wanted to make sure I got basically like that header support for everything above. But otherwise, had I done a full face of 2x4 like this, I would have lost 3 inches here, well 3.5 inches, and 3.5 inches up there. Not ideal. So that would have been another 6 inches that would have come out of this space down here basically. So that's why I was attempting to keep it as profile as I could. All right guys, so here we go. I've got all the hardboard tacked down. I just used 1-inch drywall screws because they're plentiful. I have a ton. I pre-drilled the holes. The hardboard can be a little tough to push through, and also you could get blowout if you push through it too much. So you don't want it to crack or chip or anything like that. Pretty simple build. Knocked this out pretty quickly, and again with just scraps that I already had in my garage. The only thing I bought was the hardboard. Otherwise I had the screws and I had all this extra scrap wood. Most of this stuff I've pulled out of dumpsters just as I happen to be going by a job site and I see a big old 2x6 or 2x4 sticking out of it. Might as well grab it if it's straight and not broken too much. But if this was something that I was doing as an actual job, if I was going to be doing this for somebody else, I would not do it exactly like this. Clearly, you want to use brand new wood so it'll look really nice. But even though this is all scrap wood, it does look pretty good, I think. Again, if you're doing this as a business, you're doing this as a bidded project for somebody, you're going to want to use fresh wood. You want to make sure everything lines up perfect. You don't have any chip outs. I could hit this with the palm sander if I wanted to, which I might on some of this area over here where my kiddos and my wife might be coming out, just to make sure nobody gets any splinters. Now all I got left is to finish out the bottom section here. I'm going to do that on a future part 2 of this. I've got another project I'm going to be kicking off for my kiddos this week, the next 2 days. Otherwise, I'll be putting a bench in here, as I said. It's going to be roughly bar height, I think 42 inches. I'll have to double check that. I am going to have a little bit of an overhang for the bench itself, so it will come out past this. Up here, I'm going to have plenty of storage for drills or any other random tools. Underneath the bench, I'll have that recessed back so my knees can fit under, but otherwise I'll probably put some bigger items that maybe can roll under there, push under there, or I could put another shelf and put even more storage down below. But if you guys have any suggestions or comments, something you think could have been better, please let me know. This entire build is all because somebody made a comment on the previous post when I was just trying to reclaim my garage and clean some up. And he was right. These definitely are the better way to go for getting storage up and out of the way, using all the space you have up to the top there versus the little rack I had before I started. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. It goes a long ways to building the channel, of course. Otherwise, I will see you guys on a future video. Thank you.